Everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Mitt, and on this channel I talk about stocks, investing, and finance. And you may be asking, okay, Mitt, cool dude, we might like some of your content. Why the hell are you wearing a blazer? Look, the reason I'm wearing a blazer, and you'll get to know me more as you get to understand who I am and the nature of my own existence, is that I'm also very philosophical at the intersection of me being very businessy. And sometimes I'm just like, let's do it. Let's wear a blazer. Why not? I feel like it looks cool. If it doesn't look cool, oh well, I think it looks cool. So the rest of this video is going to be me in a blazer. Literally, that's the reason. That's the only reason. I was just like, it might look cool, so I'm just going to go wear it. Palantir. I've invested $27,000 into the company, so this guy in a blazer is going to talk a little bit more about some due diligence about Palantir. Okay, this news is from April 5th, 2021. Again, I like to go deep back into a company, try to understand the fundamentals of the company from a technical perspective, but also from a macro perspective in terms of the partnerships, deals, press releases it did, analyzing what that means, trying to put the puzzles together and figure out what's going on with the company and the investment that I made. Palantir was selected by the National Nuclear Security Administration for a 5-year, $89.9 million contract for the SAFER project. Now, I was not invested in Palantir back in April, so I didn't care about this. I didn't know about this. This is partly the reason why I'm analyzing this now, months later, because it's very interesting to think, wow, the company that I invested in that I didn't really know about 6 months ago is getting a contract for $90 million from the National Nuclear Security Administration. I did not even know that the National Nuclear Safety Administration was a thing. So so we're going to analyze what the NNSA is. Palantir will serve as the platform for NNSA's Safety Analytics Forecasting and Evaluation Reporting, which is the SAFER thing I talked about, SAFER project. SAFER will help the NNSA in their mission to manage nuclear security by allowing it to best allocate its human and financial resources to prioritize safety. This is Palantir's first contract with the NNSA. Now, Palantir's president, Akash Jain, so we're not hearing from our boy Shyam Sankar, our COO, who usually comments in these press releases. He said, our work with NNSA illustrates Palantir's mission to provide software to the world's most influential institutions or important institutions in support of their most critical work. We are excited to expand our work within the U.S. government and provide the NNSA with a high-tech solution to make the best possible use of its resources in order to support the nation's nuclear security missions. So, couple of key things that are important here to understand. Number one, it's another governmental contract. So $90 million from the US government. Again, pretty good. Now, from a Wall Street perspective, this was not good in April of 2021, or they probably didn't care too much about it, and it definitely doesn't affect it now, because Wall Street's like, hey, we want to see commercial. We don't care that you guys are going into the governmental markets. You can get $900 million. We don't care, because money is cool, but we like money from the commercial sector. So first, so that's the first thing to understand, that as amazing as this thing is, it's not going to be respected by Wall Street. But by a shareholder, someone who's invested into the company and cares about the long-term trajectory, it's really interesting to me. Like this is really unique. I didn't even know the NNSA existed, and now I'm learning that the nuclear capabilities and weapons that we have in the United States is protected. It's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. It's protected. Now, pie in the sky retail investors don't know who the hell protects it, but now you recognize, okay, the company that I'm invested in is using its software to help the organization and the government to protect it. That's an interesting thing, right? It's just an interesting thing to think about and sort of understand in terms of the role of Palantir. Now, I did another video on this channel about data protection and security, and it was sort of a response to Meet Kevin's video, who's another YouTuber that I respect a lot, that said companies are unwilling to work with Palantir because they have to give their data to Palantir, and they're like scared of Palantir misusing its data, which didn't make any sense because Palantir is one of the most confidential, trusted data companies in the world. Contracts like this are what proved that thesis to be correct, right? Contracts where Palantir is selected by the NNSA forget $90 million, but for 5 years, multi-year partnership, that's awesome. And second of all, to manage and help nuclear weapons being safe, it kind of lets you understand data protection and privacy and trust concerns seem to be eliminated when organizations like this that you probably didn't even know existed are using Palantir. So really interesting stuff here, and really sort of solidifies Palantir's use case within the government. For SAFER, Palantir will configure a common operating picture that will integrate data and allow the NNSA to measure the health and safety programs across the organization and provide timely insights to data. Again, they're using Palantir's ability to honestly recognize data. This is what the point of a company like Palantir is. The program will give NNSA staff the ability to track, trend, query, and analyze and visualize safety metrics from different sites across the country. Palantir's software allows for the integration of this data across the enterprise regardless of data type or source system, and its granular security model is uniquely suited for the NNSA to collaborate across all its sites securely. So what I interpret this as is there's a lot of sites across the entire United States that manage and secure nuclear weapons, and a lot of these things are ultimately dispersed because they're supposed to be dispersed in case of a time of emergency or in case of things that were to happen. And Palantir integrating with the entire organization allows all these dispersed parts that manage nuclear weapons to come together. Now, we haven't really talked about what a nuclear weapon is. And I think it's important we probably talk about that. A nuclear weapon is one of the most one of the biggest things a company. I don't think any companies have access to nuclear weapons. Could you imagine if a company had access to nuclear weapons? Like, that would be kind of wild. A nuclear weapon is a weapon that was developed about 40, 50 years ago, and countries have access to it. Russia, the United States, and China, the biggest ones, and maybe North Korea if they're lying or if they're not lying. That basically can kill millions of people within seconds, right? Like, if you search up nuclear bomb detonation simulation, you'll find I think all of New York could be wiped out plus more within 30 seconds if a nuclear bomb were to go off there. So these are really big things. And the idea of nuclear war is something that political scientists theorize about a lot. Now, you may be asking, okay, why do political scientists theorize about it? Because it's likely an unlikely scenario, right? The probability of this happening is probably low. And I would refer you to the Cuban Missile Crisis, right? These are where we were literally buttons away, like finger on the trigger, from having a nuclear war and launching nuclear weapons. So they're not as far off as you seem. And from a geopolitical perspective, and this is kind of what I sort of want to get into, you don't know what's happening over the next 20, 30 years until it actually happens. A lot of people, when Trump was elected, were scared about how nuclear weapons would be stored and protected, and if we would have a nuclear war. And the reason for that, it's not to get super political, it's just he said a lot of crazy stuff sometimes, right? And he would just tweet whatever he wanted. And you never know if another country is just going to interpret that in a certain way and immediately launch out of self-defense. And that's sort of the scary part of just geopolitics. This has nothing to do with Trump. It has more things to do with when something random happens, when a unique character enters office. Trump for the United States, Putin for Russia, Kim Jong-un for North Korea. When these people, who are just humans at the end of the day, right? They're irrational human beings, as much as we like to think they're rational because they have authority and positions of power. Everyone's irrational. Humans all make mistakes, and humans all don't really understand the depth of our mistakes until we suffer the consequences of those things. Anything could fundamentally happen, especially when there's heightened tensions. And when Trump was president, trade war with China, obviously heightened tensions. Now, do those tensions lead to an entire nuclear war happening, right? Because when the problem with nuclear war is there's this concept of mutually assured destruction. And mutually assured destruction is a political term that says, if I punch you, you punch me. So the destruction of both of us is what we call mutually assured, right? I punch you, you punch back. I launch a nuclear weapon, you launch one back. We're both going to die. What does that do? That causes what we call deterrence. And deterrence from a political science perspective is countries recognizing we shouldn't do this because we know they will do this. So the idea of MAD, mutually assured destruction, being a potential possibility, delegitimizes the capacity to even launch these weapons, which ultimately serves as deterrence. This is what the concept of jail is. If I kill this person, I will go to jail. Jail sucks. I'm not going to do this one thing, even if I want to, right? Not saying I want to do that, but hypothetically, so jail is a deterrent. Even if there is mutually assured destruction and there's deterrence mechanisms in place to logically, rationally stop countries from doing this stuff, history shows that humans are capable of doing very, very horrid things to each other, like disgusting stuff to each other. And the fact that we live in somewhat of a peaceful world right now is astonishing, considering the vast majority of human history was not peaceful. So when you think about a company like Palantir getting this type of contract, the real unique take I had around this is that there is a very large need, and there will always be a very large need, to ultimately do this stuff correctly when you're talking about nuclear weapons and you're talking about people's lives. Because if you're not doing this stuff correctly, if there's a hint of a mistake or there's a hint of misdata appropriated, thinking that they're launching a weapon so we need to get ready, if that's not done in the right way, bad things happen. And it's not fear-mongering to say bad things happen, because bad things do happen, right? Now, the likelihood of those things happening might be low, but when they happen, it doesn't seem like they were that low in the first place. So a NNSA actually integrating Palantir is a vote of confidence around really how rich in data and efficiency and privacy and security this platform truly is. The question becomes, long-term for the stock, can we get this to go to the commercial market, right? Can the commercial market truly do or recognize why the NNSA picked them, understand the depth of what I just talked about for why they needed to pick. Like, the depth of the problem is so wide, and Palantir was the one that was selected to theoretically solve the problem. That ultimately should serve as a precedent to the entire commercial sector that deals, at least in the defense security type of market, to use Palantir to be more effective. Now, you got to go sell the product. Marketing and sales is always a thing, but getting these types of contracts is interesting to me. So those are some of my thoughts about it. I really wanted to analyze it. It's not like the biggest news in the world, but it is news that, again, as an investor in a company, and for every stock I cover on this channel, for every piece of news I bring to this channel, I try to bring my deeper analysis to it and try to take it to the next level, at least from the perspective I can add to it from my own personal experience, and also from how I'm thinking about it on a macro economic perspective for what it means for the company, what precedent it justifies, and how ultimately that leads to some level of potential future gain for the company, whether that's from a revenue perspective or an opportunity perspective. So those are my thoughts on Palantir being selected by the National Nuclear Security Administration. It was so hard not to say NASA the whole time, or NSA. NNSA was a little bit of a tongue twister. Try it out. Let me know if it was a tongue twister for you, a tongue twister for you. And let me know your thoughts in the comments on this contract and what this means for nuclear defense at the intersection of the Foundry software. Thank you guys for watching. As always, leave a comment. I respond to all the comments. My name is Mitt. This is the Daily Business Show, and I'll see you in the next one. Maybe with the Blazer, maybe not.